sorry, but if you think that RFK Jr. announcing his presidential bid to run as an independent as opposed to a Democrat now is going to hurt Joe Biden or the Democrat Party more than Donald Trump or potentially another GOP nominee, you are completely wrong. I'm sorry. I've seen the articles out there, and what a lot of people aren't considering is, for one, Democrats could switch candidates. That would throw things off. They're not considering the open primaries. They're not considering that traditional politics aren't necessarily at play. We saw that in 2020, 2022, and I think we're going to see that in 2024 as well. White working class voters that once abandoned or that Obama abandoned, Trump gained. I think RFK Jr. will gain many of those. You're not considering the unfavorables when it comes to both Trump and Biden. And also, you're not considering the censorship that we see on Google and that we see on social media. All of that and more on this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please subscribe wherever you go to get your podcast. We would certainly appreciate that. If you're on our YouTube channel, we certainly appreciate you subscribing, rate, review, give us a 5, por favor. That'll help us to move up the charts. If you can bless us with a donation, we would certainly appreciate that. We're trying to get some equipment to make this podcast better, bigger and better. So we would certainly appreciate the help there. Also, we're on Rumble. Wherever we are, please subscribe to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Follow me on all things social media. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, True Social Getter, wherever you are that I am. Find me and follow me, por favor. All right, now I want to get into this, a couple of videos that I want to play for you real quick, and then I'm going to break down all of the points that I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast. Listen, given everything that's going on in the world, the Hamas attacks, so on, etc., I'm actually going to be doing a separate podcast for that. I think that the presidential election is probably the most consequential in all of our lifetimes. For those of you that have listened to me, you know that I like Trump and I also like DeSantis. I'm not mad if either one of those candidates, all right, throw bullets at me. I don't give a flip. I'm not mad if either one of those candidates are the president. I think they accomplish some of the same things. I think DeSantis has an advantage long term in that he just gets to stay in office longer, and I think he's more focused. But we all know what we get with Trump, and we all know that I don't think the world would be on fire like it is were Donald Trump still in office today. So some people may disagree with me on that, but we know that Donald Trump's foreign policy was the bomb. And we didn't see this type of chaos going on in the world under the former president, and so he has that going for him. People already know what he can bring to the table. So anyway, now having said that, RFK Jr. has announced his run for the presidency. And yes, I know he already did that. He announced that he's running as a Democrat. But in case you missed the news, and most of you, if you're listening to this podcast, you didn't, he's now running as an independent. Carl, why does this matter? Who cares? Speaking about this guy is a waste of time. Or some of you may be saying, Carl, I love RFK Jr. I'm going to tell you why I believe this guy is a threat, a bigger threat to if it's a Donald Trump. If Donald Trump is the nominee, even if a DeSantis is the nominee, why I believe that RFK Jr. announcing his bid as an independent, he's a bigger threat for the GOP. As a matter of fact, RFK Jr. himself said that he believes he's a bigger threat to Trump, which leads me to believe, is he? I don't know. I don't want to go conspiratorial, but listen, I'm not an RFK Jr. fan. I love what he represents for vaccines. He's brought a lot of attention to that. He's no holds barred when it comes to that. But his stance on man-made climate change in the past, his stance on the Second Amendment, NRA, he doesn't understand or didn't understand that the NRA, all it is a bunch of individuals that have a membership with an organization. So making the NRA this big, bad, giant. And by the way, I wouldn't suggest you support the NRA. That's on a side note there. Gun Owners of America and good Lord, Second Amendment Foundation. I'm a part of the Second Amendment Foundation. I love them. They fight a lot of court battles all the way up to the Supreme Court. So Second Amendment Foundation, or Gun Owners of America, is what I'd recommend at this point. Anyway, but you should be a member of one of those organizations because there is strength in power. But RFK Jr. himself said that he thought that he would take more from Donald Trump, or he would take more voters from Donald Trump. I'm going to provide you anecdotal evidence, I'll give you some anecdotal evidence of clients of mine that I think confirm what he said. I really do believe that he would take more from Donald Trump. Having said that, there's a couple of videos that I want to play for you. This is RFK Jr. announcing his bid, or declaring that he's now running for president as an independent. And for you conservatives out there, I want you to remember a name: Ross Perot. Regardless of how you feel about George H.W. Bush, all right, 2020 hindsight, or how you felt then or now, how you feel about the late President George H.W. Bush, he lost that race in large part because of his pledge of no new taxes. But even with that, he reneged on his pledge for no new taxes. But beyond that, Ross Perot, I still think if Ross Perot hadn't gotten that race, George H.W. Bush would have been the president. I don't think Barack Obama, ironically, would have ever become president. I know that's, anyway, neither here nor there. We won't get into all of that. But having said all of that, Gabe, let's go ahead and roll this first video. This is RFK Jr. announcing his run for the presidency as an independent.
People stop me everywhere, at airports, at hotels and malls, on the street. And they remind me that this country is ready for a history-making change. They are ready to reclaim their freedom, their independence. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate for President of the United States. But that's not all. I'm here to join you in making a new Declaration of Independence for our entire nation.
All right, so that was RFK Jr. That was the first video. Gabe is going to set up a second video for you, which we'll play in a minute. But there's a bit of a nostalgia that's obviously connected to the Kennedy name. Even his look, Gabe, would you agree with me? Like, there's something about RFK Jr.'s look that doesn't just look presidential. Like, it looks old school presidential. You know what I'm saying? Like, he looks clean. Well, obviously he's clean, classy. You know what I'm saying? There's a look about RFK Jr. And I know that sounds trivial, but that type of stuff matters. It really plays. You got to look good on camera. You got to sound good on camera. Now, he has a very scratchy voice. I don't know what happened to his voice or why he speaks like that. I don't care. I do think that's a ding against him. Whether this isn't me trying to be trivial, but it's just true. You know, when your voice, the way that you speak, the way that you project, it matters. But if you're just looking at this, if you're watching on YouTube right now, if you're watching on a Rumble right now, just look at this guy. It almost looks like you're going in you're going into the 60s, right? But they just happened, instead of black and white, they just froze a colored picture, if you will, of RFK Jr. He just looks the part. That's important. That's really important. Look at Donald Trump. When you see Donald Trump, he looks the part, right? That stuff matters. It really does. I know it sounds trivial, but there are people out there that will vote just based on that. Just based on that. They'll tell you that they're just voting for the person. They don't vote for parties. They're just voting for the person. I think that's completely dangerous and foolish, but a lot of people do it. All right. So just keep that in mind. Now, here's what I want to do. I want to play should I play this first, or should I go through the litany of things and then close it out with the video? This is sometimes, one of the things about podcasting is, even though this isn't live, you're hearing the sausage made while it's being made sometimes. So anyway, and before we go on, I do want to ask you guys, listen, My Pillow has been with me from the very beginning. So if you are in, listen, if you want to support a great company, great leader, great patriot, Mike Lindell, please, and support this podcast as well, right? Just being open and honest with you. Please go to mypillow.com. You can click on the radio podcast square at the top of the page. Enter my name, Carl, C-A-R-L. There are a plethora of deals that are available to you. Giza Dream Sheets that are off by 50%. You have other products that are off over 60%. Heading into the Christmas holidays, now is a great time to go shopping and get deals, at a great price, because Lord knows inflation stinks. Gas prices are high thanks to Bidenomics. And so if you want to get Christmas gifts, mypillow.com, or just buy for yourself, treat yourself, mypillow.com, promo code Carl, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. Again, 800-858-0263. All of the products come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you can't beat that with a bat. So you'll help out American jobs, American manufacturing, and you'll also be helping the Carl Jackson Show podcast when you purchase from mypillow.com. All right, now getting back to this topic, what do you think, Gabe? We play the video first, or I go through my spiel as to... All right, so Gabe is in favor. Gabe doesn't want to hear me talk, so he wants to go ahead and play the video first, and that is probably the right right idea. So let's go ahead and run the next video. This is RFK Jr. Now, I didn't see the entire speech, but the entire speech wasn't that long. I think it was only 8 to 9 minutes long. But these are some inspiring moments that we've pulled for you. So let's go ahead and roll this next video, por favor, Gabe.
I'm not asking you to make a prediction. I'm asking you to make a choice. It's going to happen if you choose for it to happen. Democracy doesn't come about as a gift from oppressive elites and authorities when they finally relent. Democracy comes when people choose to exercise their power. And so I'm asking you today to join me in exercising the sovereign choice of a democratic people. Are we ready to win? Are we ready to win? And that's what a new Declaration of Independence sounds like. Remember this moment. We have a year and 1 month until the election. Let's go take back our country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you, baby. Yeah. Oh, hey. I love you, man. Yeah. Let's do a hands up. Let's go.
You're telling me, all right, we can stop this. All right, so you're telling me that a lot of people are not going to be duped or buy into this. And listen, and when I say duped, yeah, the nostalgia is unfreaking real. And listen, this guy, in my opinion, he's got what he did. Man, I should have said this at the beginning, Gabe, because this is going to be brilliant. Brace yourself. What he did was he just became a movement. Honestly, and that's what I thought he was becoming in the Democrat primary, but they squashed him. Make no mistake about it. RFK Jr. would still be rising in the polls. Everybody's like, oh, he reached 20%, which was absolutely amazing, and it was. But then he started to plateau. That isn't of his own making, guys. That isn't of his own making. The Democrat Party has done everything they possibly can to sabotage him because they don't want to go back to the past. They don't want to go back to that nostalgia. They don't want to go back, even though I disagree with RFK Jr. on climate change and the Second Amendment, which, by the way, he's changing his tune at least on the Second Amendment and quite frankly, parts on them from what I saw in the interview with Sean Hannity, parts of climate change. I just don't know if I can trust him. I don't trust him on those issues, and those are two of the biggest issues for me. All right, so two of several, but two very big issues right at the top, right? And so I would not vote for him. I simply would not vote for him. I think conservatives would do themselves a disservice by voting for him. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say this. I'm going to urge you not to vote for him and to stick to the GOP, because I think with him in the race, the more momentum he gets, I don't believe he's going to win. I just think he snatches votes. And there's this belief system out there that he snatches more votes from the Democrat Party, as a matter of fact, or from Joe Biden. But here's the danger in that thinking. I'm going to try to find this from, there's an article from Fox News. And normally I would totally agree with this column. It's from Liz Peek. So I have no beef with her at all, but I'm going to read the 3 reasons that she offers as to why RFK Jr. will pull more from Joe Biden. I just think it's wrong, and I'll tell you why. She starts off by saying, quote, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the hat tip to Fox News, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is giving Democrats fits. The son of former Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy and nephew of President John F. Kennedy recently declared himself an independent and is running for president. Why should that alarm his former party? 3 reasons, she says. Number 1, because they know that Joe Biden is a ridiculous candidate and undeserving of another 4 years in the Oval Office. His lame response to the horrific attack on Israeli citizens, a 2-minute teleprompter talk in 3 days, even as Americans have been slaughtered, confirms what the majority of Americans believe. Joe is not up to the job. Party apparatchiks are panicked that given any alternative to Joe Biden, support for the sitting president will collapse. All right. So this is what that is the first reason. The second reason she gives is Kennedy's defection will convince many traditional Democrats that their concerns about the leftward lurch of the party are legitimate. Kennedy argues that this is not his father or his uncle's Democratic Party, and he is right. RFK Jr. is switching parties partly. Number 3, RFK Jr. is switching parties partly in protest of the DNC's non-democratic behavior. The DNC has not allowed any debates among those vying for the nomination, and its decision to hold the first primary in South Carolina was clearly meant to tee Biden up for a second run. Calcification is not a great look for a major political party. Now, if we were living in conventional times, all right, so those are the 3 reasons, all right? They know, she states again, just to reiterate, they know that the Democrats know that Joe Biden is a ridiculous candidate and undeserving of another 4 years in the Oval Office. Number 2, Kennedy's defection will convince many traditional Democrats that their concerns about the leftward lurch of the party are legitimate. Number 3, RFK Jr. is switching parties partly in protest of the DNC's non-democratic behavior. The DNC has not allowed any debates among those vying for the nomination, and its decision to hold the first primary in South Carolina again was clearly meant to tee Biden up for a second run. Now, all of this normally would be completely true, and to some extent, I think parts of 2 and 3 are. Kennedy's defection will convince many traditional Democrats that their concerns about the leftward lurch of the party are legitimate, and I do think that she's right in that. The problem is a lot of those Democrats actually went to Trump. They became Trump Democrats or Trump Republicans. I think a lot of those people will move back to RFK Jr. And I'll explain. Let me just go through the litany of reasons why I believe that I think that conservatives boost up RFK Jr. at our peril. And given what we're seeing with the economy, given what we're seeing, with food prices and housing prices and the American dream that's just completely being eroded right before our eyes, I don't think that we can play. We have a White House, an administration that, in my opinion, are anti-American. Like, they don't even seem to like America. Biden has given the Iranians have been able to make, it's not just the $6 billion. There's $10 billion that they made, $25 billion that they made as a result of the sanctions being relieved. Also $80 billion, I believe, in foreign, oil money that they've been able to make as a result of the Biden administration releasing them from the sanctions that were imposed by former President Donald Trump. So these people, what we saw in Israel, in part, the Biden administration, and I'm not being hyperbolic, this is just the truth. They're in part responsible for those attacks. Hamas has already come out and thanked Iran, right, for those for the resources to be able to attack Israel in the way that they did. However, that's neither here nor there. I'm not going there in this particular podcast. So let me get back to this. Now, these are the reasons, and I mentioned them at the top of the hour. I wish I would have mentioned this, at the top of the podcast, but I wish I would have mentioned this. RFK Jr. feels like a movement. In the same way that Trump felt like a movement, RFK Jr. feels like a movement. People are rallying behind, the people that are rallying behind RFK Jr., I don't think they're going anywhere. You know what I'm saying? They're not going anywhere. He may not get tons and tons of votes now that he's walked away from the Democrat Party, but I think he will get a sizable amount of votes running as an independent, because I think a lot of people are just sick and tired of the back and forth with the Republican Party. Many people view the Republican and Democrat Party. Many people view the Democrat and Republican Party as a uniparty nowadays, even with some of the candidates, the more conservative candidates. Whether you have DeSantis, whether you have Trump, there's still people that think they're a uniparty. And I'm sorry, listen, we have Trump and DeSantis. Those are conservative candidates. I think DeSantis is the most conservative candidate in the race, but there's people out there that's saying he's not, or there's people that are saying that Trump is right. Listen, guys, let's not go crazy. I do think Trump has become very weak when it comes to the pro-life movement. He's trying to run away from his record. I don't think he should do that. I think he should embrace that, quite frankly, when it comes to the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I wouldn't negotiate with Democrats on anything in regards to life. I would just make it listen, this is a secondary issue. Make all the issues that Democrats suck at the first issue, and then hit them with those. They won't even want to talk about abortion. All right, so, but anyway, having said that, imagine if Democrats, these are the reasons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, 7. I'm going to say 7. One, RFK Jr., I just mentioned, he feels like a movement, right? You watch that video, you feel that sense of nostalgia. The people that are connected, there's a connection with RFK Jr. The same type of connection that you see with Donald Trump. There's a connection there. That's one. And so people are not going to connect with Joe Biden. Nobody's connecting with Joe Biden. But for the people that are in the middle, the people that are moderates, or the people that are quote unquote independents, and usually when they're independents, quite frankly, let's be real, it means that they're disgruntled Republicans or they're disgruntled Democrats, right? Eventually, they're all going to vote for one party either way. But if there's someone that they believe gives them this area of compromise that can reunite the country, they might look at an RFK Jr. Frankly, I think this is I think this guy could potentially do more damage than Ross Perot did when he ran as independent or primaried George H.W. Bush. I can't remember which. But then you have to consider this. This column is great from Fox, assuming that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee. I mean, the guy, to give that speech that he gave yesterday, he finally came out and, gave a real presser when it comes to Hamas, the Hamas, attacks against Israel. And I just sat there and thought, I was actually somewhat impressed. He didn't mention Iran because obviously he would be culpable. He would have to admit that he's culpable in the attacks against Israel. But I was impressed that he was able to stand there and stay coherent. There were a couple of times where you could tell he slipped up, but he was able to catch himself pretty good and read the teleprompter better than he does most times. So I was like, man, they really drug this guy up. I don't know what they put in his system, but it worked. But I want you to consider this. If Biden isn't the nominee, and they do choose a Gavin Newsom, the Democrat Party, or they do choose a Kamala Harris, if Biden has to bow out all of a sudden, I think the Democrats retain the vast majority of their voters. Listen, the vast majority of Democrats aren't going anywhere. People are stuck on their party. They believe in their party, even if they have no clue what their party stands for. And I hate to say this, but I'm starting to, that's more and more the case on both sides. Like, nobody looks at policy anymore. It's insane to me. But it is what it is. All right. So Democrats are going to vote Democrats. Joe Biden is going to get, even if he's the nominee, even if the guy is brain dead and they roll him out in a casket, he's going to get probably 45% of the vote. Regardless, people are going to stick with him. But what matters at that point are those moderates, are those independents. And typically I feel like you can pull them one way, but I think RFK Jr. will pull them. I think RFK Jr. will pull him. So if you get Gavin Newsom, you get or Kamala Harris. I don't think a Kamala Harris really, but a Gavin Newsom, as much of as a fascist as he is, will probably galvanize the base a little more. He looks for the Democrat Party. He looks good. He looks the part. Looks like he's typecasted right out of Hollywood. All right. So at that point, you energize the Democratic base. And then there's the GOP base, whether the nominee is a Trump, whether it's DeSantis. So you unify that base, but then there's still those people in the middle that say, I'm sticking with this guy. This guy's the uniter because he's got a movement. Another thing I want you to consider. All right, so 1, 2, and 3. So 1 being the movement. 2 being, imagine if Democrats switch candidates, that throws the whole race in turmoil. I think Democrats get more people that will vote Democrat, and then I think that even siphons off more from the Republican side. And then I want you to consider something else, the open primaries. You know why I don't pay attention to the polls? And I tell people, hey, be very careful with these polls right now, the polls that say Donald Trump is 50,000 points ahead of everybody else. Even if they're true, these are just primary polls. These aren't general election polls. And quite frankly, I don't even believe they're right for primary polls. That isn't to say that Donald Trump, I do think that Donald Trump is way ahead. I don't think he's as far ahead as people think, because I frankly don't believe that 95% of voters are paying attention. And that includes people that typically pay attention to primaries. People are checked out. I'm telling you. People are checked out. And for those of you that listen to this podcast, if you go speak to your friends and neighbors, even other Republicans, there are those that are going to be like you and I, that are going to be ride or die politics. We want to hear everything that breaks, every freaking minute. But there's a lot of people that don't. But there are a lot of people that were right along with us up until 2022. And they got devastated after the midterms, and they're just like, oh, that's it, I'm out. You just let me know when it's time to vote, and I'm there. And they're not really paying attention. And these people are not being polled. A good portion of these people are not being polled. Not to mention, it's very hard to get good, realistic polling today just because of online, and people don't have landlines. People aren't answering. You never know if people are lying, so on, etc. But I want you to consider open primaries. Open primaries. Consider New Hampshire. This is why sometimes I go off on a rant and I forget. But I want you to consider New Hampshire. If you recall, in 2016, it ended up, for the most part, being Trump and Cruz that were running. Now, what happened in 2016 is, if Marco Rubio, I think it was Kasich, Kasich had no polling, but he had enough just to kind of be a nuisance. And he wouldn't drop out of the race. He knew he should have dropped out of the race. former governor of Ohio. He should have dropped out like a long time before he actually did. But he was just taking votes from people, and he was getting people upset at Trump. He was getting people upset at Cruz, everybody else. You know, he was just, I don't know why he stood in so long, except ego, but he did. But I want you to go back to those polls. If you guys remember, it was Cruz that was the first Latino to win the Iowa caucuses. Now, just a few weeks prior, he was polling, I can't remember how much he won by, but he was polling at like 8 or 9%. Meaning the polls were so far off, it was unreal. And I think the polling is worse today. That's why I'm saying I don't believe anything until people actually vote. All right? Now, why are the open primaries a concern? Where did Trump performed well in Iowa. He came in second in Iowa. But people at that point in time were expecting him to win Iowa because his polls had began to surge. And then he goes to New Hampshire. Now he wins in New Hampshire. He later wins in South Carolina. But let me take you back to New Hampshire. New Hampshire, when people like Chris Christie, you'll hear pundits, even I can't stand it, even pundits on the right that are like, oh, Chris Christie is doing well in New Hampshire. Oh, Trump is doing well in New Hampshire. Oh, Nikki Haley is doing well in New Hampshire. Oh, DeSantis is not doing so well in New Hampshire. New Hampshire is an open primary. What does that mean? That means anyone can vote for the Republican nominee regardless of their party affiliation. I think that is a disaster. I don't know. Republicans, wherever you run the state, you need to close the primary so that Republicans vote for the Republican nominee and the Democrat votes for the Democrat nominee. Honestly, the only reason why they wouldn't do that is because they want a uniparty, because that is contributing to creating or keeping a uniparty when you have voters that don't have the same values voting for your candidate. And so I think open primaries will benefit RFK Jr. because I think the people that are Democrat or that are like, no, I like what Biden stands for. He's going after Trump, so on, etc. They're going to vote Democrat. The people that love Trump, they're going to vote for Trump. But and then the people that are in that open primary that might vote for Trump, that may have voted for Kennedy, since they're in the primary, since he's in the primary too. Or whatever, I'm getting confused here. And the people in the middle, I think, would vote for RFK Jr. And actually, I think that pulls more from Trump because Trump is seen as the working class guy, right? The working class guy. But I think this movement with RFK Jr. kind of, I think it's dangerous. Another thing, I want you to understand this. Democrats stick together, right? Government is their religion. You have to understand that. So government is their religion, the Democrats' religion. And this is why I think Democrats are still going to get, Joe Biden, even if he's a corpse and they roll him up, he's still going to get a large percentage of the Democrat vote because Trump is their Satan. So traditional politics aren't working. Guys, I'm telling you, on the left and on the right too, people are not paying attention to policy as much. They're not. People are dug in. People are still pissed off about 2020. People still want justice. People still want that rematch. There's a lot of people that don't, but there's a lot of people that do. And I don't think traditional politics applies. Another reason. White working class voters that Obama abandoned, Trump gained. But I think RFK Jr. can steal them back, or a good portion of them back, or a large enough portion of them back that it'll hurt Donald Trump. You guys remember this. Obama literally gave up on white working class voters because they felt like they could get more Latinos and blacks. You guys might remember that. I couldn't believe that when it happened, but that's what they decided to do. That's why they wanted illegal immigration, DACA, all this kind of stuff. They're like, we're going to go after the brown people and the black people, and we're going to leave the white people behind. You know what I'm saying? That's what they wanted to do. So those white working class voters, many of them were left without jobs in some cases, more jobs shipped overseas, so on, etc. Trump comes back, America first, blah, blah, blah. And these people are reinvigorated, and many of them become Trump Democrats or Trump Republicans. RFK Jr. comes back in, takes them back to that area of nostalgia when the Democrat Party was more reasonable, more logical, were able to offer clear answers and reasons as to why they believe what they believe. I think a lot of these people will go back and glom onto that because he said, I'm asking you to make a choice. RFK Jr. did. He's a disruptor without drama. You understand? These people will think RFK Jr. is with them, and he's this disruptor too, like they got with Trump. But they'll be like, he's for us. Maybe he'll get more done. Less drama with him. Listen, I don't care about the tweets and stuff like that. I cared about Trump's. I care about policy. I'll be frank with you. I think I'm one of the few people, even on the conservative side on radio, that actually cares about policy. I'm like, all right, personality. What did they get done? What can you do for me? What is the policy? That's what I want to know, because ultimately these fools will come into office and they'll leave. I don't care if it's Trump, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and then you're stuck with the bag. You know what I'm saying? Or we are. So I'm like, hey, I want policy. I don't care. I don't care about your personality. I don't care. I want policy. All right. That's where I ultimately end up. Now, that's not to say I don't get emotional. I do get emotional at times, but I try to come back to policy. All right. That's where I try and focus. But the white working class voters and here's another thing you have to consider: unfavorables. See, we talk about, it's so fun to talk about, right? It's media fodder. It's always fun to talk about where Trump is in the polling, where Biden is or is not in the polling. But the numbers they don't talk about are the unfavorables. They're 53%, over 50% of voters. I think the last number I saw, let me see if I can find it real quick on Real Clear Politics. And you're not going to get this information anywhere else, because a lot of people, they just won't bother to do research. It's crazy. But let's see if I can find it. Let's see if I even see it on Real Clear Politics. Where do I have to go to find that? Anyway, I'll have to search for that at a later time. I should have looked for this beforehand. Anyway, the last numbers that I saw, Trump was at about 53% unfavorable. So if you believe the polls that Trump is far ahead in the primaries, then you would have to believe the polls, that the unfavorables, that says 53% of people, of voters, or over 50% of voters said there's no way they're voting for him. And many of those people are people that voted for him before. So those are the unfavorables. So do you only believe one side of the polling? This is what you have to consider. Now, Biden's unfavorables are bad too. That's why all of a sudden we're starting to hear stories about Biden, corruption, and so on. Democrats are actually to share some stories because they want him gone. It may be too late, but they want him gone. All right. But you have to consider that 53% of people, at least if you believe the polling, or approximately 53 or over 50% of voters, say they will not vote for Donald Trump. And that includes many Republicans who actually voted for him before. I can say this anecdotally. Now, I'm in a service business where I get to see clients every single day. I can tell you 6 or 7, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe 6 clients, all that voted for Trump, that are not going to vote for him now. And 2 of those were straight up Trump MAGA flag waving in the back of their pickup trucks, literally. That shocked me. And it's not that they don't like Trump. They love Trump. They would vote. Now, let me take that back. They would vote for him if he's the nominee. They'll vote for him. Any one of these people will vote for. Nah, I take that back. One said that he wouldn't no matter what. All right. So, but the rest of them would vote for him if he's a nominee. But they want now the Trump policies without the drama. Now, you may not, you can call them all the names that you want. I'm telling you, these people were willing to take arrows back in the day for Trump. That's what shocked me. Now, that's just anecdotal, right? That's anecdotal. But that's probably 10% of my clientele. So take that where you will. Now, one gentleman said, he told me, if RFK Jr. announces as an independent, he's got my vote. And he was a Trump supporter. He just sees RFK Jr. as this disruptor. He sees RFK Jr. as a guy that can take politics back to where it used to be, where we used to focus on policy and more Americans got along. And I tried to talk him out of it. Censorship. Google. That's another thing. Google, this is the last thing. Google has censored RFK Jr. All right. Google has censored RFK Jr. like crazy. Even beyond, that's worse than social media. When you try to search for stuff, if you're a conservative, you're trying to search for stuff online, do you notice how much harder it's gotten? You have to literally type in the author. You have to type in a website to get the person that you want to get, or get to the article, column, or story that you want to get to, as opposed to putting in a general search in Google. Used to be, you could find conservative articles, liberal articles, crazy articles. No, it's the liberal articles all on the first page. And then you have to search beyond the first page if you want to search for what you have. So if you don't have keywords, it's going to be very hard. It's very hard to do research. That's what the left did to RFK Jr. How much do you want to bet? How much do you want to bet that all of a sudden, now that Google, if Donald Trump becomes a nominee, actually, if any Republican, or when any Republican becomes the nominee, there's going to be Google searches for RFK Jr. where they will compare him to the Republican nominee more so. How much do you want to bet in order to try to siphon off votes? That's going to influence a lot of people. So guys, between the feel of a movement, between Democrats possibly switching candidates, open primaries, the fact that Democrats stick together, government is their religion, Trump is their Satan, traditional politics don't work, and white working class voters that Obama abandoned, Trump gain, RFK Jr. can siphon off from Trump. Also, the unfavorables that no one's paying attention to, censorship, censorship from Google and social media. I think RFK Jr. coming into the race is a disaster for Republicans. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.